The Harvest Clock by Demi B, 2025. September had brushed the sky in copper, and the fields around Marigold Hollow wore stubble crowns. The air smelled of apples pressed too soon, of wood stacked under eaves. Mina, who lived at the edge of the orchard, liked to sit on the back step after supper and count the geese passing overhead. This evening, the flock formed a crooked arrow and honked like old fiddles. Mina's grandmother closed the shutters but left one slightly open. "The air is turning," she murmured. "Keep your scarf handy." On the garden wall, the old clock that hadn't worked in years ticked once. Mina frowned. She leaned close. The hands, frozen at 12, gave a small twitch and pointed faintly toward the orchard. A whisper ran through the grass like a secret. "When the clock stirs, the harvest isn't finished." Mina stood, heart leaf light, and followed. The orchard was dusky, branches heavy with September apples that glowed faintly even without moonlight. Mina touched one and heard a quiet note, as if fruit had learned music while ripening. She picked it, and the sound deepened, echoing down the row. Something fluttered near the roots, a small barn owl, not white but russet, eyes reflecting fire. It dropped a feather into her hand. The feather hummed, matching the apple's tone. "Carry both," said the owl without moving its beak. "The clock is gathering its harvest, and it needs more than wheat." Mina swallowed. "Why me?" The owl ruffled. "Because you listened." The orchard rustled in approval, apples knocking gently against one another. Mina tucked the feather into her braid, the apple into her satchel, and began walking toward the darker rows, where shadows stretched like unrolled yarn. At the far edge, where the orchard met the pumpkin field, a black crow waited on a fence post. When it cawed, 3 voices spoke at once, one harsh, one soft, one like cracked bells. "Late," croaked the first. "Right on time," soothed the second. "Bring what you carry," echoed the third. Mina held up the apple and feather. The crow hopped down, wings glossy with dusk, and pecked the ground. A faint circle of light opened in the soil. Inside it, tiny gears gleamed like dew on spider thread. "Harvest clock," whispered the softer voice. "It eats what seasons forget." Mina crouched, puzzled. "But apples, feathers..." The cracked bell voice interrupted. "Symbols count. Things that sing belong to the clock." Mina hesitated, then placed the apple in the circle. The gears ticked once. The crow nodded 3 times, satisfied, and flapped off toward the grain barns. The grain barns loomed like patient giants, doors cracked, smelling of straw and smoke. As Mina stepped in, the air stirred with whispery voices. Kernels slid against one another, hissing, "Late harvest, late luck." In the rafters, swallows shifted in their sleep. The owl feather in Mina's braid shivered, glowing a faint amber. From the chaff, a wooden spindle rolled to her feet, carved with leaves. It pulsed like a second heartbeat. Mina picked it up. The whispering hushed as though waiting. The clock's gears ticked faintly in her pocket where the apple had vanished, replaced by a silvery thread tied around her satchel strap. The barn door creaked wider, revealing fields silvered by dew. The wind bent the stalks and murmured, "Gather stories, not just grain." Mina clutched the spindle. She realized she was weaving a harvest of more than food. It was memory. At the far field's edge, a scarecrow leaned, hat tipped, coat patched with last year's flour sacks. As Mina passed, it lifted its head slightly. "Child," it rasped, "the harvest clock counts courage as much as corn. What will you give it when it asks?" Mina tightened her grip on the spindle. "I'll give what I can." The scarecrow's stitched mouth twitched. "Good. Leave me one thread of your hair, and I'll knot it into patience for you." Nervous, Mina tugged a strand free and offered it. The scarecrow tied it to its cuff where it glowed faintly. "When you doubt, patience will tug you back." Mina nodded and walked on. Behind her, the scarecrow leaned easier, as though finally keeping watch was no burden at all. Pip of the sandpipers skittered past, wings flashing silver, guiding her toward the mill path. The old mill sat crooked beside the stream, its wheel still, moss nesting in its spokes. Mina paused, sensing the way water leaned against stone. She held out the spindle, and the silvery thread at her satchel stretched toward the wheel. The wheel groaned and turned once, spilling a bucket of cold water into the trough. With it came a kernel of amber corn, shining even in dark. Mina caught it in her palm. The stream chuckled. Not all harvest is gathered by sickle. Some is given to those who remember. Mina tucked the corn beside the owl feather. Pip splashed in the shallows, then hopped onto the bank, shaking droplets into the night like sparks. The road ahead glittered faintly with frost, but the frost glowed gold instead of white, leading toward the cider mill. The cider mill smelled of apples, spice, and wood smoke. Though the press stood silent, the air buzzed like bees. Mina placed her apple core on the counter. The empty press groaned, and golden cider flowed into a waiting cup as if invisible hands had pressed it. She lifted the cup. It was warm, almost too warm, as though laughter itself had been brewed inside. "Drink, but not all," whispered the rafters. She sipped. Sweetness spread like courage through her veins. She corked the rest into a small bottle the mill provided. Pip dipped its beak, hiccuped, and cooed. The spindle glowed brighter, threads of light unraveling from its carved leaves. Mina's satchel felt heavier, but in the comforting way blankets are heavy on cool nights. She knew she was carrying Autumn's heart piece by piece. The cider mill door opened itself toward the pumpkin field. Rows of pumpkins stretched like a quilt of lanternless moons. Their vines whispered underfoot, guiding Mina to the center where one pumpkin pulsed with inner fire. She touched it. Warmth spread up her arm. "What do you hold?" she asked. The pumpkin split slightly, not with rot, but with light. And inside lay a small glowing coal. "Yesterday's warmth," it sighed. "Take me to the clock before frost forgets me." Mina wrapped the coal in a leaf and placed it carefully beside the cider bottle. Pip hopped onto the pumpkin, proud, until it rolled him off gently. Mina laughed. Even the air seemed to chuckle. Overhead, the geese's faint honks echoed. The coal glowed brighter at the sound, as though migration songs fueled its fire. The crow with 3 voices reappeared, pointing its beak toward the harvest fairgrounds beyond the hedgerow. The fairgrounds stood empty, stalls bare, ribbons gone, yet the echo of drums and fiddles lingered like smoke after fire. Mina set the cider cup on a post. The air thickened with music, faint but real. In a moment, children's laughter drifted through, though no children stood there. "A fair never dies," whispered the air. "It only sleeps until called." Mina's spindle hummed and spun a few inches of light thread, weaving it into her satchel's strap. Pip perched on a barrel, tilting his head to the ghostly rhythm of the drums and fiddles, as if keeping time with a tune that had never fully left. Mina bowed, as one might at the end of a dance, and the echoes bowed back. She felt steadier, as if joy itself had joined her collection. The air stirred again, pointing her uphill to where the harvest clock waited in its hollow. At the hill's base, a stone arch waited, carved with sheaves of wheat and stars. No hinges, no lock, just stone that looked asleep. Mina pressed her hand against it. The coal in her satchel warmed. The cider bottle clinked. The feather in her braid hummed. Slowly, the arch split open, revealing a tunnel lined with roots that glowed faintly gold as though remembering sunlight. Pip darted inside. Mina followed, the spindle lighting their steps. The whisper followed. "Bring what you've gathered. The clock does not eat wheat this year. It eats what endures." Mina touched each gift to reassure herself. She felt suddenly smaller than the task, but kept walking. Her patience tugged, gentle as the scarecrow's knot, reminding her she could keep going one step at a time. The tunnel curved toward a cavern that ticked faintly, like breath caught in years. The cavern opened like a cathedral of roots. In its heart stood the harvest clock, vast gears of wood and bronze, faces carved with moons, hands pointing not to hours, but to seasons. Its pendulum was a sheaf of wheat, swinging slowly as though in a dream. The air smelled of cider, smoke, and rain. Mina's gifts stirred, apple note, feather hum, glowing coal, spindle thread. "Feed me," the clock whispered, its voice like wind through dry corn. Mina placed the feather on one gear, the coal in a bronze cup, the bottle of cider at its base. The spindle she laid carefully on a ledge. Each offering melted into light, filling the clock's carvings with glow. Pip perched proudly on the pendulum. The clock ticked once, loud as a heartbeat. "More," it sighed. Courage, laughter, patience, song. Mina realized she still had herself to give. Mina stepped closer. She thought of the scarecrow's question, "What will you give when asked?" She untied her scarf and placed it on the clock's gears. "For warmth," she whispered. She thought of her grandmother's steady hands and pressed her palm against the wood. "For patience." She thought of her own small fears, the way she had still stepped forward and breathed out. "For courage." The clock absorbed each, glowing brighter. Then she sang, just a hum, the lullaby her grandmother used to settle evenings. The cavern carried it, weaving echoes until the air itself seemed to rock gently. Pip added a chirp, off-key but sincere. The harvest clock shuddered, gears turning fully for the first time in years. It chimed not hours, but a harvest note, deep and kind, rolling out through the tunnels toward every field, tree, and home in Marigold Hollow. In a village above, shutters trembled gently. The baker found her bread rose taller. Farmers felt the soil soften, easy to turn. Children woke smiling from dreams of apples, not storms. Mina's father, mending a cup, felt the gold seam set smoother, brighter than usual. He paused, listening to the chime echo through the hollow. "Ah," he said softly, "the clock keeps again." Even the geese overhead turned slightly, as if adjusting to a compass newly tuned. Fires in hearths burned warmer, steady but not greedy. The harvest clock's strike carried no alarm, only reassurance, like a blanket tucked in. Mina below felt it wash over her, filling her bones with steadiness she hadn't known she lacked. Pip leaned against her shoulder, eyes closing. Autumn had been reminded how to be generous without haste. The gears slowed, glowing faintly, "Child," whispered the harvest clock, "you gave me what I needed: memory, patience, courage, warmth, song. In return, take this." From its center, a small pocket watch slid out, plain brass but warm as sunlit stone. Its hands spun not with minutes, but with seasons: bud, bloom, harvest, rest. When you doubt, open me. The seasons will remind you all things turn, all things return. Mina held it close. The spindle beside her unraveled completely into a thread that tied itself around her wrist, glowing faint gold before settling invisible. Pip pecked at the watch until it ticked once, like laughter bottled. Mina bowed low, and the clock bowed back, pendulum slowing. Then silence filled the cavern, not empty but satisfied, like a field after the last sheaf is stacked. The tunnel back seemed shorter, as though roots had straightened themselves in gratitude. The coal's warmth lingered in her satchel, even though the leaf was empty now. Pip hopped on ahead, ribbon tail flicking. The owl waited at the arch, russet wings folded neatly. "You returned what was owed," it said. "Now autumn will keep its promise." Mina nodded. She hadn't realized how heavy the season had felt until it lightened. Outside, dawn touched the fields with bronze fingers. The scarecrow tilted its hat, patience thread glowing faintly where her hair was tied. "You did it," Mina whispered. The crow with 3 voices cawed, each tone in harmony for once, then flew off toward the rising sun. Mina walked back into Marigold Hollow, the pocket watch steady against her palm. The orchard was awake, branches lighter, fruit scent drifting sweet and steady. Farmers moved through rows, humming without realizing it, baskets filling easier. Mina's grandmother stood by the porch, shawl around her shoulders. "You were gone," she said, eyes knowing. Mina smiled and handed her an apple that glowed faintly with leftover music. "For you." Her grandmother bit in, closed her eyes, and hummed approval. Pip darted into the chicken coop and returned smugly with a breadcrumb prize. Mina tucked the brass watch into her dress pocket. It ticked gently, showing the hand on harvest, steady as the geese flying south. The day promised work, but the kind that felt shared, not heavy. Mina breathed deep, crisp air sliding into her chest like a kind friend. By afternoon, Marigold Hollow's market square filled. Stalls gleamed with pumpkins, jars of honey, plums lined like soldiers. Mina helped her father set out cups mended with gold. Customers picked them up and smiled without knowing why they felt braver. The faint chime of the harvest clock lingered in every corner. Old men tapped canes to a rhythm only they heard. Children skipped as though the square itself hummed beneath their shoes. Mina placed her spindleless satchel down, lighter now, but still precious. Pip stole a berry tart and pretended innocence, though crumbs betrayed him. Mina laughed. For once, laughter didn't vanish. It hung in the air, woven into the season like thread into cloth. The autumn fair had already begun, though no one had announced it. Sometimes clocks don't mark time, they announce mood. And autumn's mood was content. At dusk, Mina sat again on her back step. The garden wall clock ticked properly for the first time in years. Its hands pointed to harvest instead of numbers, but that was enough. She opened the brass pocket watch. The hand pointed not to rest yet, but it leaned gently in that direction. Her grandmother joined her with knitting. "It's steady again," she said softly. Mina nodded. "We gave it what it needed." The owl feather in her braid glimmered once, then faded, duty done. Pip curled at her feet, ribbon tail twitching in dreams. The crow with 3 voices cawed faintly from the orchard, each tone satisfied. Mina leaned against her grandmother, the scent of wool and cider in the air. The geese honked overhead, steady as punctuation. Mina traced the watch's surface with her thumb. She thought of the spindle's thread around her wrist, invisible but strong. She thought of the scarecrow's knot, the barn's whisper, the pumpkin's warmth, the cider's courage. "Harvest isn't only food," she murmured. Her grandmother nodded. "No, it's patience, kindness, and what you choose to remember." Mina closed the watch. In her pocket, it beat steady as a heart. She knew winter would come, frost would bite, days would shorten, but she had proof that seasons turn gently when cared for, and that giving made the turn softer. Pip snored, his tiny chest rising with trust. Mina smiled, watching stars slip like seeds into the night soil. She felt planted too, not restless but rooted, waiting for tomorrow's sun. On the first morning of October, frost touched the fences, but it felt like lace, not claws. Mina woke to the harvest clock's faint chime, deep and kind, telling the village, "You have enough." She dressed, slipped the brass watch into her pocket, and stepped into the orchard where geese still called, winging south but promising return. The scarecrow lifted its head faintly, patience thread tugging in greeting. Mina waved. Pip fluttered to her shoulder, ready for whatever errand autumn invented next. Mina breathed the chill air and smiled. "When clocks keep true," she thought, "the world keeps gentler." She walked toward the village, scarf trailing, watch ticking, and autumn, rich and steady, walked beside her.